want to start? Yep, whenever's.
Okay, okay, that's fine. Just a moment. Let me. Okay, okay. I'm gonna make you an admin. If you have, I'm sure you have like a presentation PowerPoint.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I'm gonna allow you, make you the host. Okay, awesome. I was just about thinking of switching over to video. Okay, so I'm gonna make you the focus. Let me just keep your video as the focus. Yeah, spotlight video. Okay. Um, right. Make you the host. So once you're presenting, I'm gonna switch back to being the host.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can just switch over to your PPT. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Now there we go. And we are live. Okay. Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Abisoye Falabi. Let me switch on my video. A number of people have accused me that they haven't seen my face in a while. Okay. Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Abisoye Falabi. Welcome to Azure Center. We've not been having lots of events in recent time, but I think we've had 1 or 2 events this year. Today we are happy to have the one and only Sarah with us, and she'll be taking a run through of Azure. We are glad to have her with us today because it's a rare privilege to have Sarah on a call like this. She's kind of like always busy, like from one event to another. But we thank God we are happy for COVID-19 because we can have you join us for an event like this. Sarah is a developer evangelist, sorry, an Azure advocate, Azure evangelist with Microsoft. And I've watched her do a lot of demonstration and demos and presentations during Microsoft Build and a couple of other events. So we're happy to have her here with us today. She'll be taking us through Azure, going through a run through. If you have questions, please put them in the chat session. Then we would have some time later, maybe 15 minutes or 10 minutes to go over the questions. So I'm handing over to Sarah. Over to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's great to be able to do this. And like you say, COVID-19's kind of allowed us to do this because probably normally I wouldn't be able to attend your user group. So it's great to be able to do this. So tonight's just going to be a quick overview of what Azure is and take you through some of the Azure features and functionalities and share some of my stories around that. So for those that don't know me, my name is Sarah Lean and I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft, which is a mixture of things. My role is around helping people figure out how to move to Azure, how to learn things. I'm also based in the Azure engineering team. So if you have good feedback or even bad feedback about our products, I can take that and then pass it on to the relevant engineering team who hopefully take it on board and either improve a feature or take that pat on the back if it's good feedback. So yeah, my role is very varied. It's slightly changed obviously as I can't travel. I'd usually be going around to user groups and speaking to people in person, but through obviously the great medium of technology, I can come to you and still have this interaction. Now, I'm firmly in that IT pro or IT infrastructure camp. I've been in IT for about over 14 years now, and I am still in that infrastructure role. Although I now have transitioned from doing on-prem solutions, I have moved into the cloud role. So, but my focus still is infrastructure. I still love virtual machines. I still love servers. I still love networking. That's still where my core passion lies, even though it's now in the cloud. Now, you'll be able to tell, hopefully from my accent, that I am based in Scotland, and this map is just showing you where some of my teammates actually live, and Scotland's obviously the blue peg in the middle. I always like to talk a little bit about Scotland when I present outside of Scotland, so please bear with me. Scotland is the home of the Highland cow, and I love the Highland cow. It has this amazing ability to adapt with our weird and wonderful weather, where 1 minute it can be rainy and the next minute it can be really sunny and you need to get your shorts and t-shirt on. So we have these lovely Highland cows, or Highland coo, as we say in Scotland. Now, with the introduction of cloud, we have this massive, great ability to be able to do new things. And some of the words that you might hear when we're talking about the cloud are on the slide deck on your screen at the moment. But it can also be quite daunting. I remember when I first kind of heard about the cloud, I started to have thoughts about, am I going to be relevant? Am I going to be out of a job? How am I going to change my skill set? What does it mean for me? And some of these words still scare me a little. I still don't know all of these words and what they actually do behind the scenes. But what I also love about the cloud, now that I've got to grips with it, is that it gives you this great ability to upskill, to do new things and to learn new things and have new possibilities unlocked for you. Now, I'm obviously a massive fan of Microsoft's Azure public cloud, and we talk about it being 4 things ultimately. And I want to touch on those 4 things tonight for you. So the first one is productivity. And what we mean by that is the ability to actually do what you want in the cloud. We have something for everybody. Now, I obviously focus as an infrastructure person on this kind of workload. So whether it's lifting and shifting your virtual machines or your servers from on-prem into Azure, that's we can do. If you have a SAP workload on-prem, we have purpose-built offerings within Azure that can host that and run that quite easily for you. Same can be true for NetApp, and we've recently relaunched our VMware solution, so Azure VMware solution, which allows you to take your VMware servers up into Azure. And rather than learn all of how to interact with Azure, you're still getting some of the tool sets that you're familiar with in that VMware world. So you still be able to use your vCenter and all of those technologies and all that skill set that you've learned, but also being able to leverage the cloud behind that and the scalability and the reliability that can offer you as well. And it's not just Windows, right? Obviously Microsoft makes Windows, but it's not just Windows that we focus on. And I'm sure you've probably heard this before, that more of our servers actually run Linux than they do Windows. So we're continually growing, we're continually offering lots of flexibility with our customers as well. But it's not just that infrastructure side of things. Data and databases are a key component to everybody's infrastructure. I know I have looked after many a SQL server in my time. I've even dabbled in some Oracle servers as well. And we can host all of that within Azure. Now, you have the offering just to take your databases up into the cloud as is. So currently, if you host a SQL database on a server and then have that SQL server install on top of it, you can still do that. But we also have some of the PaaS solutions where you don't have to look after the underlying hardware level or the operating system level. You just take care of the SQL database. But it's not just SQL. We've got Postgres, we've got MySQL, we've got Redis Cache, Cosmos DB, and these are technologies that, yes, I'm not familiar with, or I have used in different scenarios. I think years ago when I used to host my personal blog on WordPress, I dabbled in MySQL, which was good fun. And I also use Cosmos DB for some side projects as well to bring in data from my speaking. So I often leverage what I do, so where I've spoke at and how many people I've spoke at, just to have a look at those stats and to look back on the progress that I've done. And a lot of that is stored within Cosmos DB and then surfaced up into Power BI. Now we also have serverless, and this is definitely not my area of expertise, but I can see the power behind it. I can see the great growth that it allows companies to use and leverage as well. Things like containerizing your workloads, that is a great place for a lot of people, and they are leveraging it. We've also got web apps. So instead of hosting that traditional web server where it's, you know, your hardware, your operating system, and then you install IIS on top of it and then manage your website, you can just host their code or those files for your website up into an Azure web app. And that is something that I do leverage. My personal blog now is hosted on an Azure web app, and it's really just the code that I look after. The web app just runs itself. Microsoft takes care of all the patching, the hardware, the support. Again, I only look after the back end side of the code for that. And obviously AI is something that we're always moving in, looking at taking all of this data that we have and then leveraging it and making things better and more productive. I do a talk about monitoring within Azure and how we can actually use artificial intelligence on all those monitoring logs, all that telemetry that we have, so that we can get better and more productive within our workloads. So leveraging some of those AI capabilities to make our workloads better for us. And that's something that the Azure cloud allows you to do. Now, a lot of my talks, again, and my area of expertise is around customers moving their workloads from on-prem solutions up into Azure. And often that means that they end up with a hybrid solution because not all workloads are necessarily ready or right for moving into the cloud. But Azure is hybrid by design. We have a lot of services in the cloud that you are familiar with on-prem. So one of the main ones is Active Directory, your identity plane, the way you authenticate. We have Azure Active Directory up in the cloud. Now, it is not entirely the same as what you're used to in terms of Active Directory on-prem, but it allows you to leverage that and allows you to extend your identity from the on-prem up into the cloud and leverage some of these new functionalities and capabilities. But ultimately, it's the same platform that you've been using for a year, 2 years, 20 years. That underlying technology and the trust that you have over that product is still within the cloud as well. I've obviously touched on SQL. We have offerings within Azure for SQL as well. So again, if you've invested in that technology, if your staff know it, you can leverage that skill set and all those training and those investments, and then leverage the power of the cloud on top of it. We've got Azure DevOps, which was actually used to be called VSTS, and I can never remember what that acronym is. But if you've been using that on-prem, you can leverage Azure DevOps for the same kind of things, for doing your infrastructure as code, for doing your code reviews, managing your pipelines, etc. All of those capabilities are still there, and you can be familiar with them as well. So that's what we mean by Azure being hybrid by design. We have a lot of flexibility and functionality that obviously work together with your on-prem skill sets and your tools in the cloud. We also have a new tool called Azure Arc, which allows you to manage even more of your on-prem servers using some of the capabilities that we have around Azure as well. So we are truly looking at how we can make it better and much easier for our customers to leverage the cloud with their existing platforms. Something that we also have available within the Azure platform is something called Azure Hybrid Benefit. And that's the ability to take the licensing that you may have bought on-prem and actually use it in the cloud. When you spin up a virtual server within Azure, you are really paying for the licensing if it's a Windows server, the compute and the storage. If you have software assurance attached to your on-prem licenses, you can actually tick a little box on Azure that says that you already have that Windows license, and then ultimately all you have to pay when you spin up a virtual machine in Azure is the compute and the storage. So you're ultimately saving yourself some money. Yes, you've already paid for the license, but you're not paying for it doubly. So it's worth reading through your licensing agreement and understanding what benefits you have if you're looking at moving into the cloud as well. Now, the third thing that we talk about Azure in terms of is being open. And that's really around how we differed from what we were in the past. I know in the past, Microsoft hasn't had necessarily a great reputation with open source and necessarily listening to its customers. However, we've completely changed that. And being an employee, you might think I'm just saying that, but I truly believe that from the journey that I've been on in the last 2.5 years being at Microsoft, it's certainly a different Microsoft I'm seeing than what I saw several years ago. And the ability to listen to customers, to interact with products and grow is definitely changed under the leadership of Satya. Now, in terms of open source, we definitely have been on a growth journey. You know, over the years, we've invested in a lot of open source products. We've invested in probably the biggest one you might know is GitHub. And yes, there was some controversy around that, but hopefully you can now see that We've been investing in GitHub. We've been trying to leverage that tool set and make it better for everybody. Now, traditionally, GitHub is that tool set for developers where you code and then you can host your coding and run things on it. I'm a big fan of GitHub, to be honest. I really like it for storing my code. So I often write scripts that I use time and time again. GitHub is a great place to store that because if I want to go back to that code, I'll not remember whether I did it on my work PC, on my personal PC, on a laptop, if it's stored on a storage drive somewhere. But if it's on GitHub, I can go and get it, right? It's publicly accessible from the internet and I can remember that it's there. So I'm a big evangelist of GitHub as well. And if you're an IT pro thinking that GitHub is something just for the developers, please don't think that. I can help you actually use GitHub and make leverage of that great tool that we have available as well. Also mentioned on the slide is that we released something called Visual Studio Code. Now that's a great editor for either writing your code or leveraging if you're just writing, say, your blog or your website. It can do hundreds of different platforms. You know, I use it often to write my blog, which is hosted on Markdown and HTML, but I also use it for PowerShell and deploying some Bash commands as well to Azure. It's a great tool, it's a great free tool, and it's not quite as daunting as its bigger brother, Visual Studio Code itself, and using and getting to grips with Visual Studio Code really is a great product, and I use it every day. We also support a lot of the open source ecosystem products as well. You probably recognise a lot of the logos and names here. Over the years, I've used a few of these. I've used Chef to deploy Azure resources, and that's a great ability. So a lot of customers I know already use Chef to manage their on-prem environment, so they can take that skill set, all of that investment and training that they've made, and leverage that when they move to the cloud as well. So they're using the same platform that they've always done to manage their servers. WordPress, I talked about earlier, being something I used in the past for my personal blog. You can use that on Azure as well, so you can spin that up really quickly and it can manage all of that for you. We've also got Linux and Red Hat. We've got some of the database tools as well, and we've got tons of app frameworks that we support: Node.js, Python, Java, PHP. There really is a lot of tools there for you. It's really about being able to make the most of what you can and leverage your skills on Azure as well. We're also investing in things like Project Olympus, and that's where we are trying to outsource or open source, some of the technology and the learnings that we have learned from hosting a data center, a public data center. So we're sharing some of that knowledge around how we've built that hardware and how it runs, and helping others as well with that. Now, the last one that we talk about in terms of the Microsoft Azure cloud is that it's trusted. And by that, we mean that we have this great investment in global security. So if you are looking for some accreditations that you need to meet for your auditors, for the industry that you're in, we have, probably you covered, we have thousands of these. And we have them both at a global level, so the ones that you're probably familiar with across the board, and then we have a lot of regional ones as well. The team works really hard at keeping these up to date and onboarding more as we grow our market as well. So this takes off a lot of pressure from you. I know when I used to run data centers myself, it was always a scary time when the auditors came in and whether we were going to get that green tick and pass that audit check or not. And having this at the back end and having the Microsoft team look after it for you to a certain extent makes it a lot easier for you and takes a lot of pressure off you and allows you to go and do some of the more cool jobs that you have within IT as well. We also invest a massive amount in terms of security. I think last time we gave figures out, it was over $1 billion annually on security. We take all of our learnings from what we do in terms of security and pass that on to our customers. One of the examples that we often give is we run our Xbox platform on Azure, and that's probably one of the most attacked platforms that we have globally. we take the learnings that we have, you know, if we find a malicious IP address from somewhere constantly hacking us, we can then block that IP address, for example, and then pass that on to our customers. So we can block that from accessing your environments as well, if that was something that you wanted. So we pass on the learnings that we take and filter it down onto everybody. As well as if we saw a customer being attacked, we could then leverage all of that learnings that we got from that attack and pass it on to our other customers, again, blocking the attackers from attacking anybody else. You see that as well in Office 365 in terms of our spam filters. So if one of our customers reports an email address or a certain kind of phishing attack or malware attack on via email, we then pass that on to everybody in the Office 365 platform. It's not just held in that one tenant, it's passed on to all of our customers as well. Now, Azure is massive in terms of the amount of regions or data centers that we have available. And I think at our last count, we had over 60 regions worldwide. The ones that are solid blue dots are the ones that are live at the moment, and the ones that are a broken circle are the ones that have been announced and are coming on board. And this is a slide I constantly have to update within my deck. I think the last time I presented this session, there was only 54 regions. So we're constantly growing, we're constantly investing, and hopefully there's a data center close by to you so that you can leverage some of those local capabilities and make the most of it. Now, I like to do this bit of the presentation. I like to share a bit of our data centers. I've been in tons of data centers over the years, some really nice data centers, some not so nice, and ones that weren't pleasant to spend time in. But I like what we have at the Azure data centers. Now, unfortunately, I've never actually been in an Azure data center. It's actually really hard to get inside an Azure data center, even as a Microsoft employee. But we've got some pictures here, and I want to take you through some of those as well. So our Azure data centers have built-in redundancy in terms of power, in terms of what we have connectivity-wise as well for the internet. We're sharing all of our designs. We are very open about what we do within our Azure data centers to a certain extent. This is a picture of our Virginia data center, which is, I think if I'm right, our East US data center. Now, it was taken back in 2014, this picture, and it's still massive when you look at this picture. But in 2017, this was what that data center actually looked like. So you can see that we're constantly growing. The initial size of the data center was large, but is now considered small, considering where we are with that data center. And even in this picture from 2017, you can see that we have a lot of construction on the way. So if we were to take a picture now, it would probably be even bigger as well. This is our West US data center, if my geography is correct. And you can see again, the growth of it as well is massive. And with all due respect to a lot of the data centers I've been in, these are massive compared to the ones that I've been in. The ones I've been in would be considered small cupboards in terms of that as well. And in these pictures, you can see the differences within our data centers as well. The older ones or the original ones are much more widespread, larger. We're starting to get into being able to almost compartmentalize our data centers and our hardware into smaller sections as well to make it more serviceable, more replaceable when we need to, and just grow with what we learn from each iteration of our data centers. Now, this is a data center closer to me. It's in Dublin. So we have these two buildings. We also have another building as well as part of the data center at Dublin. If you look at this picture or overview of all the estate at Dublin, we can see those three buildings that we looked at up the back. We've also got this building, this building, this building, and then all that area at the back is where we're currently building in terms of our Azure data center. So again, the scale of these is quite large. Now, I don't know if this story is true, but I always tell it in my presentations because I think it's actually quite a fun story. So I don't think you can see it quite in this picture, but at part of the entrance to that data center, there's a small channel, a small kind of hole, if you'll like it, all the way around the data center. And And legend has it, or I've been told, that that was there to make the data center tank proof. So if anybody wanted to bring a heavy military armored tank to attack the data center, they couldn't actually, because the divot or the hole or the canal that's been built around it would stop them, because the tank would fall into it. So yeah, I don't know if it's true, but I always like to share that because I think it's a bit of a fun story. Now, I've actually not been, as I said, inside an Azure data center, and it is actually quite hard to get into an Azure data center. Again, I was told a story about a colleague who'd booked to go on an Azure data center tour. I actually think it was the Dublin one. And he'd filled in all the forms. He was really excited. He was at the hotel the night before. He got up the next morning. He went on the bus, got to the Azure data center, and was rejected for coming in. And that was because he'd slightly got his name wrong when he'd filled in the forums. So he's known to his friends as Dan, but on all of his official, documentation on his driving license, his passport, he's called Daniel. And because the form had been filled in for a Dan, and his identification actually showed him as Daniel, they rejected him because it could have been a different person. So the level of security is quite rigid. I don't think I've ever actually been to a data center where I've been knocked back like that. Sometimes I've just chapped on the door of a data center and been let in with no prior knowledge and no ID being shown. We also have within our data centers ways of kind of limiting the human interaction and monitoring what are the people who work in these data centers do. So again, a story I've been told is that if something is broken, say a hard drive has to be replaced in one of these servers, we actually have it timed from that person walking from their desk to the server and how long it will take them. And if they take too long, they have to fill in a report because we've got it all timed, and they should only be moving or going from A to B in a certain time. So there's lots of stories around the different things that we have in terms of our data center, and I'm pleased to say they are better than some of the data centers that I've been in the past. Now, this is our data center in the West Central US, if I believe right, and it looks very different from the data centers again that I've been in the past myself. The scale of the equipment is different, the size of the equipment, how it looks, how it's all plugged in, how it's all compartmentalized is very different as well. And it's much neater than some of the data centers that I've been in. There's not a mess of cables that you have to fix and try and understand as well. So that's inside our data centers. We actually do kind of have a data center in Scotland. So this is our project Natick, which is a submerged data centre in the top of Scotland, so just off an island called Orkney. Now, it's not an official Azure data centre, it's really just a side project for us to understand if we could run data centres underwater. A few teams at Microsoft do use it for some of their projects, again, for our internal projects, but I always like to show this because it shows us how we're being very innovative at Microsoft, and also because it's a Scottish data centre almost. Our data centres have been carbon neutral since 2012, and we've invested a lot in doing that, and we're investing a lot at Microsoft in order to be even more carbon neutral than we are already as well. This is a cool couple of slides that I found as well from Mark Rusinovich when he talks about the Azure data centers as well. And it shows the journey and the iterations that we've been on in developing servers that we actually use to host your workloads within Azure. So we had the Gen 2 workloads, and they were fairly small in terms of the hardware that they had. We then had, a couple of years later, we introduced the Godzilla 1. Again, we're increasing processor power, we're increasing memory. Again, this is all because of customer innovation and customer asks. Now, the next one was our Gen 6 server, again, getting much bigger, the power that we have in these servers, introducing more networking as well. We then optimized Gen 6, again, moving on and launching off of what our customers' needs and wants were. Gen 7 came on board, again, much more hardware in there, much more power in that. Then we had the Beast, and this I think is for our SAP workloads. Beast v2 is actually for our SAP workloads, and that's 3 times as big as Beast was. And again, it's all because of our customers' needs and wants. So you can see that journey that we've been on with our customers, and also we've been on. You can see the different designs and the different iterations of the hardware that we're developing. Just to show you some scale, Azure Sphere is our IoT device, and it's relatively small in terms of size. And just to show you the scale of that against our Beast, it's 0.0000533% of what Beast actually looks like in terms of the size as well. Now, getting started in Azure, again, like I said at the top of the presentation, can be quite daunting when you look at everything that's there. And what I want to share is some resources that you can actually use in terms of getting to grips with it. Now, the main one that I like to talk about is Microsoft Learn, and that's our platform where we give you a bunch of learning free of charge, depending on your job title, where you are in terms of your journey. So if you're a beginner or an advanced, we also have the ability to fire up sandboxes. Now, I like to learn hands-on, so I'm not somebody that can sit all day just reading boxes of text or maybe watching a video. I like to actually get hands-on and play with the technology that I'm learning. We have these sandboxes built into Microsoft Learn where you can actually utilize the technology. We show you how to do it, and we give you the free Azure credit built into Microsoft Learn to use it. So you can learn Azure basically free of charge and actually get some hands-on time with it as well. I've also got customers that gamify this to a certain degree. So you earn points as you complete each module and each learning path. And I have some customers who run like small monthly or weekly challenges where they'll give out vouchers or free, dinners at their local restaurant if you're the top of the leaderboard and stuff like that. So if you're a competitive team and you want a little fun while you're learning this, you could do that as well. The other great resource is Pluralsight. A lot of our Azure courses on there are free of charge and you can use them. But again, Pluralsight has a plethora of courses covering all sorts of things that you can actually leverage as well on there. We do have the ability to give you some free credit within Azure, so you can get 12 months free of services. Just have to go to that link and register, and you can use certain services on Azure for free while you are on that learning path or while you're trying to try out something. Another great resource to have a little look at is our Microsoft Cloud Adoption framework. And that's a bunch of learnings that we've taken from Azure customers, Azure partners, and Microsoft staff. I have contributed it to it, and it helps you understand that journey. So if you're looking to move from on-prem into the cloud, we have journey paths you can follow and tidbits on how to do that best. So we're sharing a lot of best practices, again, that we've gleaned from our partners, our customers, and our employees as well. So it is a bit of a large knowledge base, but it's a great place to dive in and have a look at. We also have lots of certifications in terms of Azure. You have different paths, so you can look at your apps and infrastructure, which is the ones that I've been looking at. We've also got ones dedicated around data and AI. We've got ones for modern workplace, which is Office 365. And we've also got the business apps, so Dynamics as well. And you have different levels. So the fundamentals ones are really based at someone who has just started their learning path or even is not technical. Some of these fundamental exams are also for the C-level employees within your department as well. And then as you move up, associate and expert, you can upskill and get more badges as well as you get more hands-on with Azure. Now, I've talked quite a bit tonight, but what I've done is put a lot of resources in terms of where you can go and learn some more about what I've talked about, how you can see some case studies on other people been using Azure on this website. So if you go to aka.ms/a-walk-through-Azure, you'll get a whole host of links that you can go and do some further reading on. My contact details are also on screen if you want to reach out and get in touch. I'm on Twitter, I'm on YouTube, but my email address is there if you've got any burning questions or things that you want to get if you want to ask me about. But yeah, I'm also going to hang around a wee while if you've got some questions. But yeah, so thank you for listening to my talk tonight.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Really appreciate this. We really thank you very much. Just have one or two questions from your presentation. One or two people dropped some questions. So the first one, yeah, someone is asking, could you please let me know in what specific use cases we should migrate on-prem domain controller to Azure ADDC?
That's a kind of hard one to answer without knowing your environment a wee bit more. As I said, the on-prem Active Directory isn't necessarily the exact same when you talk about Azure Active Directory. There's some things within on-prem Active Directory that you would leverage that you've probably used that aren't available, unfortunately, in the Azure version. So not everybody migrates straight up into the cloud and takes away all of their Active Directory on-prem. I know some people run the hybrid solution and use it. It really is down to what you're running in your environment and some of the use cases that you have. Yeah, that's not one I can really answer without probably spending a couple of days understanding your environment. But if you want to reach out and we can have a wee chat, then I'm happy to do that with more specifics.
Yeah, Nikhil, are you there? Do you still want to shed more light on your environment?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for giving me a chance. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for your presentation. It was lovely. Thank you. My basically question was relating to one of the clients where they really want to go with a hybrid solution. They still want to have their AD on-prem because it's a pretty huge. They really don't want to shift as of now. But some of the applications, obviously, we are trying to do as a kind of lift and shift, but it will still connect to their on-prem AD. So I am thinking of leveraging your AD Connect, right?
Okay.
Because that's how it will connect to as a hybrid solution, right? But what about the domain controllers? Like, do we need to migrate them for those applications to have, or it still needs to be on-prem?
So in terms of a traditional domain controller, if you're talking about whether you need to host that with, like an operating system and then Active Directory installed, I'd probably say you do need a domain controller in Azure, just because the latency, if you're pushing the software in Azure if you're pushing your applications from Azure to authenticate all the way back down prem, you might notice some latency issues. So I'd always recommend to have a domain controller in Azure, even if it's just as a site, pretending that it's, a remote site, which obviously it is, and adding that in. I wouldn't necessarily migrate a domain controller, but building a net new one, spinning up a virtual machine, installing the operating system, installing Active Directory, and having a domain controller in Azure is probably the way you want to go, even if it's just a small one, the smallest that you can get, without compromising performance, I think is what my recommendation would be.
Sure, thank you.
No worries. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have one more. So is the service fabric resolution is actually your orchestration framework on Azure, or is just your AKS? Is that the one?
I'm not familiar with Service Fabric and what it actually is. AKS is our container solution.
Okay, so that's the only container solutions, or I mean, other than your ACI container instances or something, but the container solution where you have your orchestrations and all those.
Yeah.
Oh,
AKS is the way you go.
Okay. Sorry, Sarah, my mic was on mute the other time.
Okay.
I was trying to respond. Okay. Yeah, because I guess you were hearing like the echo, because I was also using another system for feedback.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, to monitor. Yes. So every other person was just thanking you for the wonderful presentation. They thank you for taking time out to do this. I think the other question that might be on other people's mind, because we are streaming as well on YouTube, would be relating to costs. A number of people want to know how is Azure cost? How is it? Is it quite more expensive? Is as compared to other platforms? Because I know a couple of people who are on this call. They use AWS a lot. A number of people use AWS. Then a few people use Google Cloud. So we have a mix. We have a mix of those who do AWS. You have a mix of those who do Google Cloud. And their concern would be around costs. Can we say that Azure is more cost effective? How is Azure pricing like?
That again, that's a slightly hard one to do. So our pricing, I think our marketing always say it's cheaper to run Windows virtual machines on Azure than it is when you look at AWS prices, especially when if you have that software assurance on your Windows licensing. We can do that. That's definitely something our marketing department always makes sure that we say. Overall, in terms of price, that's always a hard one because it's ultimately how you really design a system and how you implement it. Is going to be the pricing. We do have pricing calculators. We do have total cost of ownership. So if you know how much your current environment costs, whether that be on-prem, whether that be in AWS or GCP, you can run analysis on that versus what it would look like in Azure, and then you can make your own mind up. I know we have deals, we have different pricing tiers, so we have that pay-as-you-go where you are ultimately just paying as you go against a credit card, which I think is a little more expensive than if you were to go with what we call an enterprise agreement. So if you sign up with one of our licensing deals and get like a partnership, so if you say, I'm going to be running Azure for 3 years, we'll give you a discount or a certain amount of discount on some of those services. So there's different ways. The answer's never going to be an easy one, but we definitely have tool sets that you can use to try and understand the cost before you go down that route of spinning up Azure.
Okay, that's fine. Just to add one or two things to it, because I was recently looking at costing for Azure. Just as you said, Azure is way cheaper. Azure is way cheaper when it comes to running Windows, Windows Server or Windows operating system as compared to other platforms, because we were recently trying to spin up a test machine at my office, and on Azure it was it was something around $72 or thereabouts on, I'm not going to mention the name, but on another cloud service provider, it was something in the range of 102 US dollars for the same, not even for the same spec. Their spec was 6 gig RAM, while on Azure it was 8 gig RAM. So yeah, so in terms of costing, I would anytime, any day, I use the pricing, the cost estimator a lot to try to get prices for various services I might want to spin up. So that has really helped a lot as well. So yes, just to also answer the question, just to add one more thing to it, is use the Azure Estimator. It helps you a lot to get to know what prices you might eventually be paying for. And then just to also add, using the reserved instances in terms of should I say trying to pay upfront would give you a 30% discount. It's boldly written there, 20 to 30% discount is boldly written there on the portal. It helps out a lot with businesses that can estimate how much they might spend or how much they are envisaging to spend on server costs. Oh yes, Damilola also has a question. Please, can you type your question? Damilola, if you can hear me, you might want to unmute yourself. Yeah, Damilola, you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? Good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Yeah, hi. I just want to ask a quick question. What is Microsoft and a lot of world cloud leaders doing in regards to countries that have certain jurisdiction for scaling, for example, financial institutions scaling customer information to the cloud? Because I live in Nigeria, for example, and I think there's some clauses regarding this issue, and I think maybe companies like Microsoft or other industry leaders can actually put organizations like CBN and the likes through.
So I think each region or each country will be doing something slightly different. Forgive me, I don't understand what you need in terms of Nigerian law for your financial. I know a lot of banks in the UK.
Yeah, Sarah, let me help you with that. Yeah, let me help you with that. So, Dami, there is a couple of banks use what's it called? They use Azure Stack. Yeah, some of them use Azure Stack, and then there is a fiber connection that they did in collaboration with May1. May1 is a cloud service provider. They are one of our Microsoft Gold partners as well, and they also run some services for local redundancy here in Nigeria. So a couple of the banks partnered with them, subscribed to their service. So May1 comes over to their place and set up like an Azure Stack set up for them, put up the machine. So an Azure Stack is just like a machine, basically Dell, if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah. It's basically like a Dell box that has all of the, should I say, management suites, just as you have in Azure, which is, as they put it in Microsoft marketing, is you having a piece of Azure on your local environment within your data center. So you can have your Azure portal, you can manage your services and all of that. So that's one alternative that I know a couple of banks are using. The other alternative that I know that some people also use in terms of managing their private cloud as well with public cloud is using a service called Windows, what's it called? System Center Virtual Machine Manager. They use it to manage virtual machines across multiple locations, that is, be it on their on-premises, be it on a private cloud, and also be it on their public cloud. So they use that as well. So that allows them to push data from one point to another. So to just answer your question directly, a couple of businesses, I know all the banks are currently signed up as enterprise customers for Microsoft. So a few of them already have Azure Stack sitting in their data center that they use for local redundancy. And I'm a bit familiar with the CBN regulation. The regulation says they shouldn't store customers' data in a public cloud that is hosted outside of Nigeria, but it doesn't say anything about backup, or should I say redundancy, but it's more around storing the data that will be used at that particular time. So a couple of banks are still using their private clouds to handle that. Some of them use the like of May1, some of them use the likes of forgotten the name of this other guys. MTN also does data center. We have one of their managers on this call. So MTN also does data center as well. So they use this local partners who are indirectly or directly connected to Microsoft for data, to store data which is locally redundant, and then have a failover or a backup either in Azure or something. And they also they host their applications on Azure, but their database, it's not on Azure directly, but in a way it's finds itself there. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's very clear now. That's very clear.
Okay. Joshua, you said you have a question as well. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, so my question is basically, let's say there are many cloud service providers out there, and then we have Azure. So why Azure? Why should I, go for Azure and then not go for other service providers? What's so unique about Azure?
I think just the ability to, scale up We also have, I don't know how many times I've been in managing a data center where I've ran out of space, I've ran out of storage, had to delete stuff, had to juggle things around, had to resize things. The flexibility of the cloud allows you to do that, and all cloud providers allow you to do that. That's something that AWS and GCP have the ability to do as well. What I love and what I think a lot of customers are using Azure for is the fact that if you're a Microsoft house already, if all your on-prem environment is Windows, if you're familiar with all of that, if you've invested all your training, if your staff are all familiar with Windows technologies, Microsoft technologies, moving to Azure is a lot easier. And the interfaces are very familiar, how you use all that, the terminology used, that's where a lot of customers find it really easy to move to Azure. And that's probably one of the selling points for me. That's why 3-4 years ago, when I was saying I'm going to get made redundant, the cloud's going to change my job, I'm going to have to go and look somewhere else. And when I started looking at AWS and Azure and looking at them, I found skilling myself up in Azure a whole lot easier than doing AWS. The terminology was there, the interface was familiar, I found things quite easy. And again, a lot of customers that I have are going down that route because we have that ability just to onboard quite easy. Obviously, there is a learning curve if you're moving to a cloud, but I think just the familiarity with that Microsoft ecosystem and the trust a lot of customers put in to Microsoft as well, that's why they're moving. All the cloud providers will provide you the same service ultimately, but it's just about your familiarity with one, your trust with one, your price with one, and potentially if the cloud provider has a data center near you, right? Again, like the last person asking a question was about that kind of data sovereignty and having that close to you because of the regulations in the industry you're in. So yeah, hopefully that helps answer the question a little.
Okay. Yeah. Just to add, I don't know if that answered your question, Joshua.
Yes. I'm very cool.
Okay, so just to add one or two things to it, she mentioned something about having a data center close to you. In reality, in the grand scheme of things, that is very important because you want to host your application or your services or your data center or anything as close as possible to your customers. So take, for example, if you have users or customers who are somewhere in Toronto, or you have users who are somewhere close to East Asia or something, there is a Microsoft data center close to you that is close in that region. And so that helps you a lot when it comes to speed. If you're obsessed with speed, if your application is mission critical, you would definitely want to stick with a cloud service provider that has multiple data centers across the globe for that. Then secondly, on Azure, you actually pay for what you use. What that means is if you spin up a server and you don't use it for a while, the cost is minimal. You're not charged a flat fee, or you're not charged a fixed fee. You are charged fees based on the CPU, the number of work the CPU does, the number of hours the server was on, and the number of times you use the server, that is data in, data out. Were you sending in data to it? Were you picking up data from it? So those kind of things in terms of cost, Azure is, I will anytime, any day want to go for Azure because I'm being charged for what I use. And in terms of security, you will also want to go with a partner or a cloud service provider that really takes security very seriously, because as she said during her presentation, the last figures they gave out was over $1 billion, that they invest over $1 billion in terms of security. And I've been a user of Azure, ATP, Advanced Threat Detection Service, and a number of other security features that are available within Azure. You won't find that elsewhere. I could remember 2 years back, when I was working in a startup and we were doing something with the banks. We needed to do some test penetrations. I recall that the very first day, the auditors or the audit team tried penetrating through our firewalls and the likes. We actually got a notification from Azure that some things are actually happening, as compared to our workloads in other cloud environments, whereby they were able to start the test and complete it as quickly as possible. But over on Azure, the very first hour they started running the test, the same kind of test they ran on the other cloud service provider, we were actually notified. I got an alert. Their IP got blocked. A number of things happened that we needed to add their IPs into a whitelist of safe IPs that Azure should allow. So when you look at it from that perspective, and also looking at what you also mentioned, if your skill set, if you're familiar with Windows and all of that, bringing all of that together, it's definitely good for you to go with Azure anytime, any day. But if your use cases, you feel or you believe, which I doubt that you might want to, but if you believe your use case or you can't find a service that works for you on Azure, no problem. You can always try out other cloud service provider. But I also know that Microsoft is working on a project that allows you to manage or see your other services in other cloud service providers. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah.
Yep, that's Azure Arc. That's going to give you that ability.
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question, Joshua.
Yes, that answers everything.
Oh,
everything.
okay.
I was very curious, and then I and my colleagues, we are trying to build up a certain app. I'm from Ghana, and we are trying to build up a certain app. So I'm really convinced, and I'm going to convince them more so that we can push our project onto Azure.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sarah, for spending this 1 hour with us. I'm very cautious of time because I know you might want to get to do some other things. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you for spending so much time for this. We hope to see you sometime later in the next month or 2 months from now.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Okay, so thank you very much for everyone who has joined us today. Please just drop your email addresses on the chat. We would, I would pick up on that and then send the 1 month access to Plural Site to everybody who has been on this call. Just type in your email address. Also, for those who are joining us from YouTube as well, you can as well join in this. Just in the comment section, just put in your email address where you want me to send your access code to 1 month access to Plural Site Library. Plural Site is an on-demand learning platform where you can learn a couple of things, a number of things, be it on Azure, other platforms as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very, very much for coming. Just a quick one, if you have any questions, any other questions or something, you can just, you can raise your hands or mute your mic to ask. Okay, any questions? Any questions? Busayo, Chilas, Damola, Joshua, anybody, any questions? Okay, everyone. Thank you all for coming. If you don't mind as well, you can just drop your phone numbers. We're looking at starting a WhatsApp group. We had everyone to it. So we can always share more information or things relating to learning or things on Azure. You can just share your WhatsApp number if you're interested. We would definitely create a group and add everyone to it. Someone was asking when is the next event. The next event will definitely happen first or second week in August. But we're hopeful that something might come up before then. But first or second week in August, we would definitely have another event. Someone is asking why not Telegram. Telegram is good, but if everybody is okay with WhatsApp, I use Telegram once in a while, but I think a lot of people might be fans of WhatsApp. Any other question? Okay, so I would still leave this on and then go offline from YouTube. So if you have any questions, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm not getting the pronunciation of your name right. If you don't mind, can you unmute just your name, Nike? Or I don't want to spell. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to mispronounce your name. Okay. Vinash, is it Vinash? I can hear you. Okay.